let's take a look at the last passage from The Jilting of Granny Weatherall by Catherine Ann Porter. I want you to look at two things in this passage. I want you to look at the light and dark imagery, and I want you to look at the stream of consciousness style. Granny is elderly, at the last moments of her life and with dementia, and the stream of consciousness is the narratorial style that Porter chooses to represent what she's thinking, the inside of her head, if you will. Think for a minute as if you are riding down the highway in your car by yourself, and your mind just moves from idea to idea, from image to image, from thought to thought. That's the closest we can get in day-to-day life to something called the stream of consciousness. And that's what Porter is trying to represent here. The other problem in this passage is much more interesting, which is, in fact, we can't describe what it's like to die because, very obviously, once you're dead, you can't recollect it. So it can only be an act of the imagination. So this is a really interesting passage in that way. That is, Porter is trying to show what it's like to die. And all she can do, of course, is just to imagine what it might be like. So let's look first at the light and dark imagery. Light flashed on her closed eyelids, and a deep roaring shook her. So the first line of this passage is the word light, and light is also the last word of the passage. She stretched herself and with a deep breath and blew out the light. Okay, so light frames the passage, and the image of light opens it, and the image of darkness ends it. So in the imagery, we get a sense of what Porter feels like it must be like to actually die. And then in the middle of the passage, we get the stream of consciousness. We get her moving from person to person, from thought to thought. First, Cornelia is on her mind, and she says, is it lightning? And again, we get that light image. I hear thunder, and that comes back to the roaring. There's going to be a storm, so there's an implied metaphor there that death is a storm. And she goes back to when her children were young, called the children in, and Cordelia, who is in the present, says, Mother, here we are, all of us. And then she says, is that you, Hapsy? Now we know from the story that Hapsy is already dead. Oh no, I'm Lydia. We drove as fast as we could. So we have the adult children there, but in the stream of consciousness, she thinks that they are small. We have religious imagery in this passage, as we do throughout the story. The rosary fell from her hands, okay, and Jimmy, the third child, holds her by the hand. Beads won't do. It must be something alive. And then she has a recognition, or she has an epiphany. She says she was so amazed her thoughts ran round and round. So, my dear Lord, this is my death, and I wasn't even thinking about it. And she recognizes at this point that she's dying, and she recognizes that her children are here to see me die. And she says, but I can't. It's not time. I've always hated surprises. So she's not ready to die. And then she goes into a long stream of consciousness of all of the things that she would like to do before she dies. And then Cornelia is the one that keeps us grounded in the present, in the moment of her death. Cornelia's voice made short turns and tilted over and crashed. Oh, mother, oh, mother, oh, mother. I'm not going, Cornelia. I'm taken by surprise. I can't go. And we're not sure in the next one, because it's not in quotation marks, that who is thinking or saying, you shall see Hapsy, the dead child, again. And then it comes back to Granny. Granny made a long journey outward looking for Hapsy. And journey is a significant word there, because we can think of life as a long journey to death. And Granny is looking for the dead child and wondering what would happen if she couldn't find her. There was no bottom to death, she thinks. She could not come to the end of it. And then again we pick up the light imagery. The blue light from Cornelia's lampshade drew into a tiny point in the center of her brain. It flickered and winked like an eye. It fluttered and dwindled. Granny lay curled down within herself, amazed and watchful, staring at the point of light that was herself. And notice again the repetition of the word light, the imagery of the word light, and she herself has become the light. But now we get the contrast, we get the darkness. Her body was now only a deeper mass of shadow in endless darkness, and then the repetition of the word darkness. And this darkness would curl around the light and swallow it up. Okay, so the metaphor for death in this passage is the extinguishing of the point of light that is Granny's self, her identity, her person, whatever you want to call it. God give a sign. Okay, so she is waiting for the sign, and in the last passage, the last part of the passage, we get the metaphor of the jilting. For a second time there was no sign, again no bridegroom, and the priest in the house. So she's preparing for a wedding. The priest is there, but she perceives the priest is there for the wedding, not for her death. And she focuses on the wedding, the jilting that she experienced at the altar. She could not remember any other sorrow, because this grief, the grief of the jilting, wiped them all away. Oh no, there's nothing more cruel than this. I will never forgive it. So her last thoughts are not of her children, not of her family, not of the dead child Hapsy, but her last thoughts are of the moment when she was left at the altar, when she was jilted and abandoned. I'll never forgive it. The last sentence of the passage is her actual death. She stretched herself with a deep breath and blew out the light.